All right, good morning. I'm going to go ahead and get started. My little spiel in the beginning will give enough time for people to continue to join. But all right, well, my name is Ashley Craiglow. My pronouns are she, her. For a physical description, I am a woman with shoulder-length red hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a green top. And I am a development specialist with the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging. I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us for today's session on Aging is Everyone's Business. So before we get started, a few housekeeping items. We are excited to announce that today's webinar will be accessible to a wider audience. We have arranged for American Sign Language interpreters who will be present throughout the session. These interpreters will rotate every 20 minutes, ensuring that everyone can follow along. So if you need that feature, you just need to click on the interpretation button on your screen, and that should pop up in a separate window for you. Additionally, we are recording the entire webinar with the ASL interpretation. The recordings will be available on our YouTube channel for later viewing. Whether you attend the live session or catch up later, you'll have the opportunity to engage with the material in a way that suits your needs. I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can keep up with the latest additions to our video library. We are also always looking for suggestions for future webinar topics. So if you have any suggestions or ideas for speakers, feel free to send those to me at my email address, which I will share in the chat. Please keep your microphone set to mute. Just a note, if you're experiencing any issues with bandwidth or audio quality, it often helps to disable your camera. If you'd like, you can enter your first name and organization or community that you're from into the chat box, and then what you're hoping to get out of today's session, and then how you found out about us. If you have any questions during today's session, please feel free to enter those questions into the chat, and we'll address those at the end of the presentation. We will also take some additional questions at that time as well. And then at the close of today's session, you will see a quick evaluation of today's session pop up in your browser. So if you could take a few minutes and complete that survey, it greatly helps us when planning future sessions. And then one last quick reminder to visit our Facebook page for more information about upcoming sessions such as long-term care options, which is being held on February 19th at 10 o'clock. And then you can also check our website at arrowheadaging.org, which I'll put in the chat as well. So a little bit about who we are. The Arrowhead Regional Development Commission is designated by the Minnesota Board on Aging as the Area Agency on Aging for Planning and Service Area under the authority of Title III of the Older Americans Act. The Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging is committed to helping older adults maintain their highest level of independence. Area agencies on aging are regional organizations that provide services, supports, and information for just about everything that older adults and their families could need. Minnesota has 7 AAAs across the state that are local connections to older Minnesotans and the community supports they need as they age. The Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging's planning and service area, as designated by the Minnesota Board on Aging, includes the counties Aiken, Carlton, Cook, Itasca, Koochiching, Lake, and St. Louis. I'm going to now take a moment to read our Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging land acknowledgement. So as we support our mission to help older adults maintain their highest level of independence, we do this while being respectful of the space we are being welcomed into by Indigenous people. We strive to deepen our understanding of the multiple ways in which people see and understand land and acknowledge the Indigenous people who have relationships in this land. We also acknowledge the decades of historical trauma, loss, and grief experienced by Indigenous people. It is our promise not to only recognize these truths, but also take action to show support for our Indigenous elders, neighbors, and friends, and understand our place within the past, present, and future of this land. We know this is just one step in recognizing and honoring the sovereignty of tribal nations. So I am honored to be joined by today's presenters, Brenda Shafer-Pellinen and Georgia Lane. So thank you both for being with us today, and I'm going to turn things over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ashley, and thanks everyone for joining. We're going to dive right in here. Feel free to put your name and where you came from in the chat. I'm glad to see you here today, or if you're watching this at a later date, thanks for joining us. Next slide, please. So our objectives today is we're going to talk about kind of the who, the why, and the how of age-friendly businesses. So the who is thinking a bit more about our aging demographics and our perceptions on aging. The why is thinking about the economic impact and social value that older adults provide. And the how is the practical tips. I wanted to say that this webinar today is just a bit of a teaser, a bit of an introduction to a longer age-friendly business training that we have to offer. And you can connect with us. We'll tell you how at the end if you are interested in taking a more in-depth age-friendly business training. Next slide, please. And next slide. So, all right. The first thing to know is that guess what? Aging is so cool. Everyone is doing it. We often talk about older adult populations as if that is something other than us, but wanting to set the stage today to think about aging is something that we are all doing from the moment we're born until the moment that we die. Next slide. Also, we are living a lot longer lives than we used to. In 1860, our average life expectancy was 39.4 years old. So statistically speaking, if I was born in 1860, I would not be alive today. So this is a great human success story. Today, our life expectancy is 78.9 years old. And on our next slide, if you can switch to that, you will see that we are going to continue to increase in our life expectancy and live longer, hopefully more healthier lives. By 2060, we think that the average life expectancy will be a little bit over 85. And you can see from here that women tend to live longer than men. And I will also note that there are discrepancies among different populations, and minority populations tend to have a lower life expectancy for a number of reasons. But this is looking at our population as a whole in the United States. Next slide, please. So this is a demographic that we all should be paying attention to. I think the title of our presentation today is that aging is everyone's business. We all need to be thinking about it. 2020 marked the year where in Minnesota we have more people 65 and older than we do children in 18 and under, and people 65 and older are the largest growing segment in rural communities. This is a very important demographic. And we want to think about, as we all age, how do we tap into the innovation and work ethic that Minnesotans are known for to not just think about challenges, but also optimize the opportunities that come with changing demographics. Next slide, please. You can click through for our next couple facts here. We know that the majority of people 65 and older live at home and in the community. When I'm out talking to the general population, sometimes I go out and talk to students or people in college and ask them, what percentage of people do you think live in some type of nursing home or assisted living? I often hear 30, 40, 50%. So there's a lot of misconceptions about where we live as we age. But that's, as you can see here, only 4.5% of older adults live in some type of assisted living and 2.5% live in a long-term care setting. So we need to think about aging in community. What allows us to age and live well in our communities? And age-friendly businesses are certainly one of those. Next slide. There was a great report put out a few years ago by the Stanford Center on Longevity. It talks about a really amazing statistic when you start to think about it, is that half of today's 5-year-olds will live to be 100. It's pretty amazing. I actually have 2 children myself, and when I think about that, and we are going to continue to live these longer lives. What do we do with those extra years? But our societal institutions, our economic policies, and social norms need to evolve. We need to think differently about this next phase in life, and thinking about optimizing those opportunities and what we do with those extra years. Next slide, please. So this is, I'd like you to there's no right or wrong answer here. I want you to pop in the chat 1 to 5 words that you associate with aging. So when you were looking at your calendar this morning and said, oh, I'm going to pop on this age-friendly business webinar, or when you think about your own aging or other people's aging, what words pop into your head? And there are no right or wrong answers. So I'll give folks a second to pop that into the chat. All right. Thanks, Tracy, for being our first brave person. I love the words that are popping up: growth, opportunity, value, and expanse. Those are very great words and positive words. Sometimes when I'm talking to folks, and I guess I kind of primed this for thinking about opportunities as we age, folks can put other ones in there too. When I talk to people, I hear often frailty sometimes. Having diseases or chronic conditions. If anybody else has other examples that you've heard, maybe not that you think, but you've heard other people think, if you look at aging in the media, you tend to see, folks who are not able to do things that they once were able to do, and can tend to be more negative perceptions on aging. But the reality is that young and old are not binary concepts. They're not one or the other. It's not like one day you're young and the next day you wake up and you're old. But we can tend to think of them in very this young or old terms, like, oh, my mom is 82, but she's really young. Right? What does that mean? So we need to start thinking a little bit differently about the words that we use, and recognizing that aging is a spectrum. Aging is living. And so when we're thinking about age-friendly businesses, we want to approach it and frame it in a way about thinking about it being good for everyone. It's good for all of us as we age, versus that is something that we do for all of, quote unquote, those old people. Next slide, please. So just a really brief touching on ageism, because this has a lot of impacts on our communities and on our businesses. This is a report put out by the World Health Organization, and they define ageism as the stereotyping and discrimination against individuals or groups on the basis of their age. We all have very deeply ingrained concepts of what it means to age, and we can do additional trainings on that as well if folks are interested, but just wanted to put this out here as we're approaching age-friendly business work. Next slide, please. Ageism is everywhere, and it affects people of all ages. It can exist in our institutions, relationships, and in ourselves. It can be self-directed, interpersonal, and institutional. So I just can't underscore enough, like the way we think about aging, we all have our own, and to know, this is not meant to be a negative comment. We just all have our own perceptions on aging, and ageism, when you start to look at it, really exists everywhere. Next slide, please. All right, so our second part here is talking about the economic value. So if we're thinking about changing the ways we think about aging, let's talk about the value that older adults and age-friendly ecosystems have. Next slide, please. So if you put together everyone in the United States who's 50 and older, that would be the world's third largest economy by GDP. So when we think about why businesses and why our communities should be thinking about aging, a really compelling reason is because of the amount of economic impact that older adults have. As you can see here, it's just behind the United States and China. So that's a very large chunk of people that contribute to that GDP. Next slide, please. There's a book put out by Joseph Coughlin, and he makes a very interesting case, not only of the why, but also the how businesses should be thinking about this demographic. His quote here is that the emerging population of older adults isn't just big, it's so enormous that it's as though a new continent were rising out of the sea, filled with more than 1 billion air-breathing consumers just begging for products that fulfill their demands. So this is just as a resource for folks to look up if you're interested. But really, I read a statistic, I think this was research put out by AARP, said that overall in the United States, only 10% of marketing budgets are dedicated towards the 65 plus population. And so we're really missing a very large, thinking about the needs, the wants, preferences of this demographic. Next slide, please. So AARP has got some great resources out there on the longevity economy. This is a series of data analysis from AARP, and I also think they worked with The Economist on this. that shows that the economic contributions of people 50 and older is worth over 9 trillion in 2018, and that's only projected to grow. As you saw, or think back to the demographics, how we're going to live longer, this is just going to be more prevalent as our society ages. Next slide, please. So there is often a myth that older people are economic burdens on society, contribute little. But this data here show that the economic contributions of people 50 and older contributed to $8.3 trillion in 2018. Not only is it this economic piece, there's the whole piece of volunteering and caregiving that people 50 and older combine, whether you're caring for a partner or a spouse or a parent or a neighbor or some other extended family member. We offer a lot in terms of unpaid activities simply for caregiving, also for volunteering. Folks who are doing volunteering of all sorts, you have more time on your hands. Some people do if they retire. And so that's a really important piece of the picture for our overall economy. And in addition, think about taxes that people 50 and older pay. This demographic paid 2.1 trillion in tax revenue in 2018, and that figure will quadruple by 2050. So we really should be paying attention to this demographic and the contributions that they offer. Next slide, please. This is Minnesota specific. The 50 plus household accounts for 57 cents of every dollar in Minnesota in 2018. And again, that's projected to grow. Next slide, please. This was a really interesting thing put out. So I was looking at this and I thought, okay, great. We're talking a lot about the 50 plus, right? A lot of people 50 and older are still continuing to work. But this article talked about, and the research done here, that Americans hold people 70 and older in America hold more than 30% of the country's wealth. So it's not just those folks who are in their 50s and 60s and still working and going on vacations and doing all the things. It really, 30% of our wealth is held by people 70 and older. Next slide, please. This was a research study put out by the Age Wave. It's called The New Age of Aging. 59% of retirees and pre-retirees want to work in some form of retirement. So we need to think differently since we are living longer lives. We're not designed to take a 30-year vacation. People need meaning and sense of purpose. Work can look a little different, but we see that 2 out of 3 people see that retirement is a new chapter of life and they want to continue to contribute and work or potentially volunteer or a mixture of both in some way. There are also people who need to continue to work for economic reasons. And so that's an important factor to consider. Next slide, please. We also know, right, you can't get through many conversations, in my world at least, without hearing about a workforce shortage. And we know that people 65 and older are the fastest growing segment of the labor force. So how do we continue to keep folks within the labor force, to be able to optimize on their contributions, keep people active and engaged? Companies have to think differently about creative ways for how to engage these workers and to make the most of what they have to offer. Next slide, please. Why older workers want to work? We see that the majority of people 65 and older will live well into their 80s and many considerably beyond. 2/3 of older Americans review retirement as a new chapter of life, as I just mentioned. So here's a couple ways that companies can engage older workers. That I won't go through all of them, but really thinking about flexible schedules, valuing their experience, understanding that people of all ages can learn new things. We tend to, think, if you want somebody new and fresh, that tends to be somebody who's younger or a recent graduate. Whereas people who have been in the workforce for 20, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is, have a wealth of experience and knowledge under their belt. That we want to be able to continue to work on. Next slide, please. So enter age-friendly. This is part of a global movement that is gaining speed and gaining momentum in here in Minnesota, in our local communities and everywhere, recognizing that our current systems are not created for modern aging, right? So what do we do about this? There's an entire paradigm and ecosystem that's talking about age-friendly, that to help seize opportunities and meet challenges associated with aging populations, with our whole society as we are all aging. Next slide, please. So this illustrates an ecosystem of ways to be age-friendly. So the age-friendly business work is kind of couched under this broader ecosystem. You can see here that we have, under the World Health Organization, back in 2006, launched the Age-Friendly Cities or Age-Friendly Communities movement here in the United States. AARP is the U.S. affiliate. There are age-friendly health systems, age-friendly public health, age-friendly universities, age-friendly states, of which Minnesota is one. So age-friendly Minnesota work happening. And so the age-friendly business piece is another pedal that we need to add on this, to show that it's kind of couched. They're part of the community, part of the broader ecosystem. Next slide, please. So an age-friendly community isn't just good for older adults, it's good for everyone of every age. If you think about, I'll just use a very, I guess, timely example regarding snow removal, right? So let's talk about a business. Could be hard for folks to get in if you get dumped on by snow, you got an icy sidewalk, it's hard for folks to get in. If you keep your sidewalk shoveled and put the grit down to keep the ice away, that's good for parents who are pushing a stroller, people utilizing a wheelchair, have other mobility issues. If it's good for older adults, it's good for people of all ages. If you have clear signage and good lighting, that is actually good for everyone. So really trying to break down this barrier and the way of thinking around it's just for doing things for older people. Age-friendly work is for everyone of all ages. Next slide, please. So there is, before I hand it off to Brenda real quick, this is a bit of a rabbit hole for age-friendly businesses, but that's what we are talking about today. The Age-Friendly Institute has started back in 2006 an age-friendly employer program. We have yet to have anyone in our region to take this on. So if you are interested in this, we'd love to help somebody champion this. But they've certified hundreds of leading companies like American Red Cross, AT&T, in Minnesota, Minneapolis Institute of Arts, Hennepin County, Olmsted County, Twin Cities Public Television, more and more. So it's a formal certification that you get. And the next slide, if you can switch to that, kind of shows a little bit about the criteria. It's talking about employers who value employees based on proficiency, qualifications and contributions, maintaining policies and practices that support people 50 and older, valuing employee knowledge, maturity, reliability, and productivity, and commits to meaningful employment, development opportunities, and competitive pay and benefits for people 50 and older. So we're happy to provide more resources on that. I know this is on our end slide for resources, but we're encouraging folks to take a peek at that. If you're kind of piquing your interest around how to be a more age-friendly employer, maybe recruiting some more folks, looking at workforce strategies for recruiting that 65 plus population. And next slide. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brenda, and feel free to pop stuff in the chat or hold it for the end when we have some Q&A time.
All right, thank you, Georgia. So part 3, we're gonna talk a little bit practical tips. We're also gonna continue to talk a little bit more about kind of making that case for why it makes sense for your business to become age-friendly. And embracing age-friendly business practices isn't just about a social responsibility, it's really a strategic imperative in today's evolving marketplace. As our global population ages, businesses that adapt to serve older adults' preferences and needs are discovering that there are untapped opportunities for growth and innovation. So let's explore 5 compelling reasons why becoming an age-friendly business can transform your organization and position you for success in an increasingly multi-generational economy. Next slide. So when we talk about smart business decisions, let's follow the numbers. The older adult market is not just growing, it is thriving with unprecedented spending power, as Georgia alluded to. So let's explore why this demographic represents one of your biggest opportunities. The older adult consumer base is diverse, fast-growing, and already controls 50% of the discretionary spending in the U.S. And the 50-plus population controls almost 80% of the U.S. aggregate net worth. So tapping into this expanding older consumer base can help boost profits. And by becoming more age-friendly, you can expand your customer base and increase your bottom line. Bearing in mind, 1 in 3 Americans is now 50 plus, and by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be 65 plus. Next slide. And the beauty of age-friendly design, as Georgia mentioned, is that it creates a universally welcoming environment. When you make your business more accessible for older adults, you're actually improving the experience for everyone. Just looking at some of the simple changes that can have a broad impact, things like wider aisles or automatic doors that are appropriately timed so someone can enter into space, well-lit signage. Making age-friendly changes to a business makes that business more appealing to every consumer. Next slide. So beyond just serving a specific demographic, becoming age-friendly opens doors for expanded market opportunities. Looking at how creating an inclusive environment naturally leads to business growth. In an age-friendly business initiative, we seek to foster age-friendly environments where businesses thrive on a larger customer base and people enjoy access to a variety of goods and services regardless of their age. Next slide. Reason number 4, it is easy to do. You might be surprised to discover that your business is already really on the path to being age-friendly. So looking at some simple steps that you can take to build on your existing strengths and connect with this market. So that might be advertising those features to your potential customers by promoting your business as age-friendly through our network of age-friendly community partners and organizations. And your business can become more visible to older adults through this and to the general public. Next slide. Number 5, it is affordable. One of the most compelling aspects of becoming age-friendly is it doesn't require a major investment. So looking at the cost-effective changes that can make a significant impact on your business. And there are a wealth of low and no-cost changes that you can make to your operations and policies that will help you to better serve an aging customer base. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide. So, as Georgia mentioned, we do a larger age-friendly business training. So we're going to touch on some of the areas that we address in that training, but give you a little sample, a little teaser of some of the areas that we talk about. And in today's rapidly aging society, creating an age-friendly business isn't just about good service. It's essential for growth and sustainability. And our training program can help to equip your organization with strategies to attract and retain older customers while fostering an inclusive environment that benefits everyone. Our training covers crucial areas including customer service excellence, effective communication, creating welcoming physical spaces, age-friendly marketing approaches, inclusive hiring and staffing approaches, as well as community advocacy. So by investing a little bit of time in that age-friendly training, your business can be better positioned to tap into the significant purchasing power of older adults while building a reputation as a community leader in age-inclusive practices. Next slide. So one of those areas, providing an age-friendly experience. Looking at how your physical space and customer interactions can be optimized to welcome customers of all ages. And that might be things like providing personal shopping and delivery services. It might be considering some personal training, individual training for your staff on how to serve customers who may have a dementia diagnosis or who may have physical or developmental disabilities or mental illness, and training employees to communicate effectively with older customers. Next slide. So another area is creating an age-friendly environment. That's now that we've established a welcoming environment, focusing on how we can make sure that the needs of our consumers are successfully filled in terms of safety, accessibility, lighting and sound, comfort. As Georgia mentioned, that can be things like making sure that your business is free of snow, ice, and debris. And making sure that entrances, doorways, and aisles are wide enough to accommodate a scooter, a wheelchair, or a walker. I remember the other day I was talking with somebody after church, and they had been talking about, during our service, they had been talking about, you know, the environment that you create says a lot about who do you want to have there. And I thought about it again when I was at the store the other day as I was going, and I'm not going to mention who it was, but I was going through a local business that had incredibly narrow aisles. And it just makes you think, when you create space like that, who are you inviting? Who are you welcoming into that space? Are you saying we don't want you here, or are you saying we want everyone? So things also like ensuring lighting to reduce glare on surfaces, including the floor, making sure that merchandise is easily reachable and staff assistance is available if needed. Next slide. So with a strong foundation in place, customer service foundation in place, now let's look at how we can effectively reach and engage older customers through your marketing efforts. Things like looking at your website, looking at how you design materials, looking at your customer service, looking at how you promote your business, and looking at something as simple as fonts and styles. You know, are you making information easy to find for people? Key information. Are you designing materials that clearly highlight the important information? Do you offer customers the option of calling the business directly to place an order or make a reservation? Do you have inclusive marketing that includes older adults in your ads and featuring customers using your products and services? And in that simple category of those fonts, using things like sans serif type fonts, which don't have the little small features at the end of the strokes, and always using things font typefaces that is at least in 12 point and larger. Next slide. So just to continue a little expand on that marketing, images matter. How do you portray older adults in your marketing materials? Are they absent from your materials? If you are specifically targeting as something as that older population, are you utilizing images that are continuing stereotypes about what it means to become older? Next slide. So your team at your business is your key to age-friendly success. So thinking about how diverse, multi-generational staffing can enhance your business. And that might be through things like creating an age-inclusive workplace by establishing policies for equality, implementing flexible work arrangements, providing continuous learning opportunities for people of all ages, encouraging intergenerational collaboration and communication, setting a good example, addressing age bias and stereotypes, and supporting work-life balance, and making workplace accommodations to ensure the comfort and safety of all employees. I was talking to someone yesterday at a business event about the fact that often when we hire people, we pay attention to those things about when we're onboarding, what might someone need. But often we don't take into account that we all change and evolve over the course of our life, and that's not just a straight line continuum. It may go up, it may go down. Thinking about making sure that people are aware of the fact that workplace accommodations are available to them at any time when any need should arise. Next slide. So as I mentioned, including mentorships and multi-generational collaboration, we really need to think beyond our traditional mentorship models. When we bring together people of different generations in the workplace, we create a powerful ecosystem of shared knowledge and experience. While younger team members might bring fresh perspectives on technology and emerging trends, while experienced staff can offer invaluable industry insights and proven problem-solving strategies. So this two-way street of learning not only enhances our team's capabilities within the workplace, but it also creates a more dynamic and innovative and inclusive workplace culture. Next slide. So one other area I like to touch on is the advocating in the community. So you've made sure that your doors, your electric door takes has an adequate amount of time for someone to get in. You've added a bench so that someone can sit down if they need to. You've made sure that you've got a surface for people to write checks out at, and you've looked at all these other things in your physical space. Is that the end of where things stop? And to which I would argue, no, it is not, because we have so many opportunities as business owners and as pillars of our community to advocate in the community. So looking at how your business can take a leadership role in promoting age-friendly practices beyond just the walls of your space. And these community engagement opportunities can help. We can be looking at ways to engage in public meetings and hearings. We can participate in city council meetings, public hearings, and community forums to voice support for age-friendly policies and initiatives. We can form alliances and partnerships by collaborating with other local organizations, partnering with other nonprofits, senior centers, advocacy groups to strengthen the collective voice for age-friendly initiatives. We can leverage data and research by gathering data on the needs and preferences of older adults in our community and using this information to advocate for specific changes. We can engage with elected officials, meeting with our representatives, discussing the importance of age-friendly policies and how they can be implemented. We can host community events, workshops, seminars to raise awareness about the importance of creating age-friendly environments. And we can advocate for policy changes. We can provide specific recommendations to our local government officials based on best practices and community needs. So by actively engaging with local and county government through these strategies, businesses can play a pivotal role in creating an inclusive and supportive environment for older adults. Next slide. So I want to touch a little bit on something that we have been doing at the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging now for a number of years, the creation of the Aging Impact Award. So we really are trying to find that opportunity to catch people doing things that are good, catching businesses and organizations coming up with ways to think outside the box. So the region, we are taking a bold step in recognizing businesses and organizations that go above and beyond in serving our older adults. And the Aging Impact Award celebrates those who understand that an age-friendly community is really a thriving community. And throughout our 7-county region, businesses and organizations are already making a difference. They're redesigning spaces for better accessibility. They're creating targeted services, training their staff in age-friendly practices, developing inclusive hiring policies. These businesses are showing us what's possible when we prioritize the needs of all generations. So, next slide. So, do you know a business that deserves recognition? Whether it's a local hardware store that added better lighting and wider aisles, or a restaurant that developed a better, more readable menu and atmosphere, we want to hear about them. And your nominations help us identify and celebrate these community champions. For business owners, this is your opportunity to join a growing network of forward-thinking businesses, learn from success stories, discover best practices, and be part of a movement towards an age-friendly community. Together, we build a community where businesses thrive by ensuring every generation feels valued. So, as going back to some of the things that we touched on before, the older adults are major contributors to the economy and the fastest growing demographic in the U.S. That Minnesotans 50 plus make up 36% of the population, yet contribute 40% of the state's GDP. And aging is unleashing an exponential power in every industry. Businesses that target the economic power of older adults will see big gains. Next slide. So what can you do? As a business or as a community member, you can nominate a business or a community organization that's going above and beyond to better serve older adults. You can even nominate yourself. You can take and engage with us at the Area Agency on Aging. We can help you to look at examining your practices. We can help you with short assessments that help you to look at things like your business and community organizations, physical space, inclusivity, training practices, and more. Next slide. So who is eligible? Any business in the 7-county Arrowhead region can qualify. The business has to demonstrate positive impacts for older adults by providing an innovative service, adapting or improving physical space, hiring practices, or employee training on how to serve older adults. Organizations that do receive funding from the Area Agency on Aging are not eligible for this award, unfortunately, as much as we appreciate the good work that they do. And so we've got, this slide here is a little bit outdated. We are coming up on now the nominations starting on January 20th for our next round of awards. And those nominations will be open until February 14th, and we are planning to announce those award winners in March. So get thinking about who in your community is really, I have just had so much fun being involved with this and keeping an eye out for and looking for those businesses and those organizations that are doing really neat things. Everything from businesses that were really stepping up and really serving older adults and looking for creative ways to serve older adults and to connect with people during COVID, to we've got one of the businesses in our area that is a flower grower, and they have allowed people who purchase from them to contribute to a fund to purchase flowers that are brought to the skilled nursing facility where the residents they bring all the raw product in, and the residents go through and are actually able to assemble arrangements for themselves and for their neighbors. To things like truly northeastern Minnesota, the Lions Club in McGregor, which has a fish house out on Big Sandy that they keep up and maintained and stocked and accessible throughout the ice fishing season, so that any older adult or someone from the disability community is able to go out and utilize that, and without having the physical stress of having to haul things out there, is able to continue to enjoy an activity that they may have been doing for their entire life. The nomination forms can be found on our website after January 20th, or you can reach out to us at agefriendlyarrowhead@argc.org. Next slide. There we go. So, other things that you can be doing to take action. You can schedule an Age Friendly 101 presentation for your next team meeting or event. Again, nominate a business or an organization for an Aging Impact Award. You can request a consultation with one of our staff at the Area Agency on Aging to look at how to incorporate an age-friendly lens into your work. We are happy to provide, if you've got a newsletter that you do or social media and you'd like to add some content that focuses on an age-friendly lens, we are happy to help you with formulating that content. You can bring community stakeholders together to discuss an issue and talk about the need for age-friendly changes in your community, and you can get support in pursuing an age-friendly designation in your community through our staff here at the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging. So as our communities grow and evolve, creating spaces that welcome and support people of all ages isn't just a nice to have. It's essential for building thriving, vibrant, inclusive spaces where everyone can thrive. So if you are a business leader or a community organizer or a passionate citizen, there are so many meaningful ways to champion age-friendly initiatives in your area. From hosting educational presentations to pursuing those formal designations, every action counts. And so those are just some of the steps that you might take. Next slide. So just some resources, really great ones. We worked with North Force on developing a toolkit for employers that want to create returnships, which are like an internship for someone who has left the workforce for whatever reason and is looking to re-enter the workforce, or maybe looking to change to a different sector of employment. But a bunch of other different great resources from, as Georgia mentioned, things from the Age Friendly Institute, things from the state of Minnesota on finding balance for working caregivers, information from AARP on the longevity economy, a lot of wonderful resources that you can take advantage of. Next slide. And I'm going to flip it back over to Georgia. Oh, unmute.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brenda, for all this information. I know every time I think about it, I think of a new business, of one that was